It's time for London Bedroom 6 exclusive.
you try support. She away, give me half of that. Oh my God, no. Holy smoke, me, I'm sitting slick on the escalator. I'm up in the king of hard man, baby, devil paid. First of the year, tax time, keep me with a smile. I'ma get a couple of G's, can't be your child. Yes, right. This is the world that we living in. Yeah, I tell you about my game, could never end. Never let me be sex, niggas give me feedback. I don't need no skin, dog. You can keep the seeds back. I was been a hustler, that's what she can dig. You just like a teller too, and we know the need. Her looks in my brain, we can go a long way. On her arm, my name, got that for a birthday. I'll say that's the only way I gotta have it. Playing different life, all the ass, I'ma grab it. Don't you get mad at me, cause you brought the chose up, glad to see the truck when I pulled up, don't pop the lock, big booty, hopping in now, dark skin, gold teeth, man, you know we in that. I know that's your baby mama, I know that it hurts, son. You know when we get together, I'ma let her fuck, son. Let her hit the block, son. No time with the mom, son. You were out of condom, then I make her run, son. And she wanna be, I'ma let her gonna be. She can be herself anytime that she get with me. Backseat action, riverside relaxing, making the DVD, that ass I'm waxing. I'ma keep it real with you, I'ma never deal with you. I don't fight over hoes, I'ma let the steel hit you all on the town. Talking bad, trying to down me. In your heart, you been sad, boy, you better crown me.
So high in the sky, I'm an astronaut. I'm super geek, my nigga, call me juicy, laugh a lot. This weed that I'm smoking on, you gon' have to cop. That weed that you smoking on, you gon' have to stop. This shit'll make you feel higher, way on the hill. And if you wanna calm down, pop a seat, mix it in a cup, sip it up. 12 sips, 12 pounds of G, I'm in love. Like this, y'all.
Yeah, DJ Squeaky in the house, y'all know what time it is. 1996, baby. Dropping that shit for your motherfucking ass. Don't forget about the DJ Squeaky greatest hit part 2. Nigga Tom Ski, Stuck Stuff. Insane Killer, baby. Gonna be dropping that shit for your motherfucking ass. We're back to the main. This the motherfucking main. We're gonna be doing this shit for your motherfucking ass. Bitch.
Just put a mask and a pistol grip. And when I hop out on the
my mouth while I heard was a ball. Pulling out her mouth, rubber on stroking ball. Good with them Cali drugs, like they Cali bug. I got some weed strips, do you try it some? Pop a pill, bro, no, for real though. I'm just trying to get you high. I'm just trying to get you high.
I'm so high that it got a nigga nervous. I'm so drunk that it got a nigga swerving. Sweating so hard that a nigga barely breathing. All in the slow lane, but a nigga speeding. Inhaling so much Cali Kush, try my best to stay woke. Windows fog up, Cadillac full of smoke. I got a DUI, so I know I think it pulled over. Know I'm bullshit. Man, I should've got a shot, but nigga just high. Riding late night, 5 in the morning, I done called daylight. A bitch finna trail, but I don't give a fuck. I'ma hit her with this dick and shut her ass up. I'm in love with them Cali drugs, like that Cali bug. I got some weed strips, you should try it some. Pop a pill, bro, no, for real though. I'm just trying to get you high. I'm just trying to get you high. What you know about being Cali high? Cali high. What you know about being Cali high? Cali high. What you know about being Cali high? Cali high. I'm just trying to get you high. I'm just trying to get you high.
Check it out.
I'm trying to make a knot go down. When the police hit the lights, I do not slow down. Oh God, oh God, oh God, straight up. Brand new Draco ready to crash like when the stars go down. I'm rich for real, I can press a button and make the ops go down. Nah, facts. Pussy boy. Charging with theft by taking cause his drip stolen. Pussy. Trash fight in the neighborhood, it's 60 rolling. Pussy. Had to do CPR, I got your bitch choking. Pussy. Selling Percocets, weed, boy, and cocaine. So many choppers in the spot, we leave the door open. Put the water in the pot, and you stick the fork in. Put some holes in your shirt, nice red soaking. I ain't running from no smoke, here, semi-colon. Ice like I'm trying to make a knot go down. When the police hit the lights, I do not slow down. Oh God, oh God, oh God, straight up. Brand new Draco ready to crash like when the stars go down. I'm rich for real, I can press a button and make the odds go down. Nah, facts. Pussy boy.
les clarifications suivantes quant au cadre juridique général de l'occupation en question. Premièrement, le territoire palestinien contrôlé par Israël depuis 1967, y compris Jérusalem-Est, est un territoire occupé. Deuxièmement, l'illicéité de l'acquisition de territoires par la force s'applique au territoire palestinien occupé. Cette règle interdit l'annexion du territoire par Israël, y compris une annexion de facto. Troisièmement, l'article 51 de la Charte des Nations Unies est sans pertinence au cas particulier, puisqu'il s'agit d'un territoire occupé par Israël. Quatrièmement, le peuple palestinien bénéficie du droit à l'autodétermination. Cinquièmement, les instruments relatifs à la protection des droits humains s'appliquent de manière extraterritoriale, y compris en situation de conflit armé et d'occupation militaire. Il ressort de ce qui précède que tout territoire au-delà des frontières de 1967, effectivement contrôlé par Israël, est un territoire occupé et que toute annexion de tout ou partie du territoire en question, que ce soit de jure et de facto, est interdite en droit international. Ainsi, sont applicables en territoire palestinien occupé des règles conventionnelles et coutumières du droit international humanitaire, notamment celles énoncées dans le règlement annexé à la 4e Convention de La Haye de 1907, ainsi que l'ensemble des règles de la 4e Convention de Genève de 1949. Sont également applicables le droit à l'autodétermination et les règles relatives à la protection des droits humains. En situation d'occupation prolongée, les droits humains ont une importance particulière pour la protection de la population occupée. À cet égard, il doit être noté que le terme occupation prolongée ne correspond pas à une catégorie juridique spécifique qui serait régie par des règles différentes. En d'autres termes, les mêmes règles s'appliquent à toutes les occupations, qu'elles soient prolongées ou pas. Le caractère prolongé de l'occupation a un effet non pas sur l'applicabilité des règles, mais sur leur application. Ainsi, par exemple, plus l'occupation dure, plus il deviendra difficile d'invoquer les exceptions liées à la nécessité militaire de la puissance occupante qui sont prévues dans certaines règles du droit international humanitaire, ou les dérogations liées à la nécessité prévue dans les instruments de protection des droits humains. De même, plus l'occupation dure, plus les obligations positives de la puissance occupante s'interpréteront de manière large. Ces obligations étant des obligations de comportement, les États doivent mettre en œuvre tous les moyens qui sont raisonnablement à leur disposition pour les réaliser. Pour une situation d'occupation prolongée, le contrôle établi implique que la puissance occupante a plus de moyens à sa disposition pour réaliser les obligations positives issues du droit international humanitaire et des droits humains. Après cette brève présentation du cadre juridique général, je m'attacherai maintenant au caractère illicite de l'établissement des colonies en territoire palestinien occupé. L'article 49, alinéa 6 de la 4e Convention de Genève de 1949 prévoit que, je cite, la puissance occupante ne pourra procéder à la déportation ou au transfert d'une partie de sa propre population civile dans les territoires occupés par elle. Fin des citations. Dans son avis consultatif de 2004, votre Cour a conclu que, je cite, Israël a mené une politique et développé des pratiques consistant à établir des colonies de peuplement dans le territoire palestinien occupé, contrairement aux prescriptions du 6e alinéa de l'article 49. Fin de citation. Conformément à cette conclusion de la Cour, la Belgique a affirmé le caractère illicite de l'établissement des colonies en territoire palestinien occupé au regard de la 4e Convention de Genève. En outre, la Belgique considère que l'établissement des colonies est contraire aux résolutions pertinentes du Conseil de sécurité, dont je ne citerai, faute de temps, que la résolution 2334 adoptée le 23 décembre 2016. Conformément aux critères énoncés par votre Cour dans l'avis consultatif sur la Namibie, cette résolution constitue une décision énonçant des obligations à destination des États membres des Nations Unies. Ainsi, après avoir affirmé que la création des colonies constitue une violation flagrante du droit international, le Conseil de sécurité, je cite, exige de nouveau d'Israël qu'il arrête immédiatement et complètement toutes ses activités de peuplement dans le territoire palestinien occupé, y compris Jérusalem-Est. Fin de citation. Au vu des termes clairs du paragraphe mentionné, il est évident que la poursuite de la politique de colonisation par Israël contrevient à la résolution 2334 du Conseil de sécurité. Ceci conclut le deuxième point de l'exposé oral de la Belgique. Monsieur le Président, avec votre permission, je vais maintenant passer la parole au professeur Paios Kotroulis pour poursuivre la présentation des arguments de la Belgique. Je vous remercie pour votre attention.
Je remercie Monsieur Herbot. Je donne à présent la parole à Monsieur le professeur Paios Kotroulis. Monsieur, je vous en prie.
Monsieur le Président, honorable membre de la Cour, c'est un immense honneur pour moi de me présenter pour la première fois devant vous aujourd'hui au nom du Royaume de Belgique. Je poursuivrai l'exposé oral de la Belgique en me penchant sur les règles pertinentes pour apprécier l'illicéité de la politique de la colonisation du territoire palestinien occupé, avant de conclure sur les conséquences juridiques des violations identifiées. Le Conseil de sécurité, dans sa résolution 2334 de 2016, met clairement en exergue le caractère multidimensionnel de la politique de la colonisation du territoire palestinien occupé. Dans le même ordre d'idées, la Belgique a insisté dans ses interventions au sein du Conseil de sécurité sur les liens entre l'établissement des colonies et ses mesures connexes. Mesures qui font partie intégrante d'une véritable politique de colonisation illégale. Il est ainsi impossible d'analyser juridiquement cette politique de colonisation sans avoir égard aux mesures concrètes par lesquelles elle se matérialise, au contexte général dans lequel elle s'inscrit et aux effets produits par elle. Les mesures par lesquelles la politique de colonisation se matérialise, considérées individuellement, sont problématiques à l'égard du droit applicable en territoire occupé, à savoir notamment le droit international humanitaire et les droits humains. À cet égard, la Belgique a toujours condamné tout particulièrement le recours à la violence par les colons envers la population palestinienne occupée et souhaite relever l'obligation d'Israël de mettre fin à cette violence et d'en punir les auteurs. Mais plus fondamentalement, la politique de colonisation vise à obtenir une modification de la composition démographique du territoire palestinien occupé et du statut du territoire lui-même. À ce titre, cette politique est contraire à plusieurs règles fondamentales du droit international. J'aborderai successivement l'interdiction de l'acquisition du territoire par la force, le droit à l'autodétermination et le principe de non-discrimination. Premièrement, la politique de colonisation est contraire à l'interdiction de l'acquisition du territoire par la force. Cette interdiction fait partie intégrante de l'interdiction du recours à la force, énoncée dans l'article 2, paragraphe 4 de la Charte des Nations Unies, dans la résolution 2625 de l'Assemblée générale des Nations Unies, ainsi que dans l'article 3, alinéa A, de la définition annexée à la résolution 3314 de l'Assemblée générale. Dans son avis consultatif de 2004, votre cour a confirmé l'applicabilité de l'interdiction de l'acquisition du territoire par la force au territoire palestinien occupé. Cette interdiction comprend l'annexion tant de jure que de facto. Les mesures adoptées par Israël dans le cadre de sa politique de colonisation visent à la création sur les terrains d'effets irréversibles et la consolidation de son contrôle sur le territoire concerné à travers l'établissement des colonies. Elle crée ainsi une situation de fait accompli qui s'apparente à une annexion de facto telle que votre cour l'a définie dans son avis consultatif de 2004. Deuxièmement, la politique de colonisation est contraire au droit à l'autodétermination du peuple palestinien. Ce droit est consacré dans la Charte des Nations Unies et réaffirmé dans la résolution 2625 de l'Assemblée générale, ainsi que dans l'article 1er du Pacte international relatif aux droits civils et politiques et du Pacte international relatif aux droits économiques, sociaux et culturels de 1966, pacte auquel Israël est partie. La résolution 2625 précise que le fait de soumettre des peuples à la subjugation, à la domination ou à l'exploitation étrangère constitue une violation du droit à l'autodétermination et que les États ont le devoir de s'abstenir de recourir à toute mesure de coercition qui priverait les peuples de leur droit à l'autodétermination. Dans son avis consultatif de 2004, votre cour a conclu à la violation du droit à l'autodétermination. Pour ce faire, elle a porté une attention particulière aux mesures entraînant le départ des populations palestiniennes de certaines zones et la modification de la composition démographique du territoire palestinien occupé. De même, dans son rapport publié le 14 septembre 2022, la Commission internationale indépendante, créée par le Conseil des droits de l'homme, est chargée d'enquêter dans les territoires palestiniens occupés, y compris Jérusalem-Est et en Israël, souligne que, je cite, le choix de l'emplacement de certaines nouvelles colonies réduit encore la probabilité de la fin de l'occupation et viole le droit des Palestiniens à l'autodétermination. Fin de citation. Il ressort de ce qui précède que l'adoption de mesures coercitives liées à la politique de colonisation visant à la modification du statut et de la composition démographique du territoire palestinien occupé est contraire au droit à l'autodétermination. Troisièmement, la politique de colonisation suscite de sérieuses inquiétudes au regard du principe de non-discrimination. En effet, l'établissement des colonies est intrinsèquement lié à la mise en place de deux systèmes institutionnels et juridiques distincts. L'un pour les habitants des colonies et l'autre pour la population palestinienne du territoire occupé. La Commission internationale indépendante, chargée d'enquêter dans le territoire palestinien occupé, y compris Jérusalem-Est et en Israël, ainsi que le Comité pour l'élimination de la discrimination raciale, ont souligné justement le caractère problématique des mesures concernées par rapport au principe de non-discrimination. Ainsi, et pour conclure avec cette partie de l'exposé oral du Royaume de Belgique, la politique de colonisation est problématique à l'égard de l'interdiction de l'acquisition du territoire par la force, du droit à l'autodétermination et du principe de non-discrimination. J'en viens à présent au quatrième et dernier point de l'exposé oral de la Belgique, les conséquences juridiques des violations identifiées. Je commencerai par les conséquences juridiques pour Israël, avant de m'attarder sur les conséquences juridiques pour les États tiers et les organisations internationales. À titre liminaire, la Belgique souhaite souligner le fait que plusieurs règles mentionnées ci-avant sont des normes impératives du droit international général. On pense par exemple au droit à l'autodétermination et à l'interdiction du recours à la force, dont fait partie l'interdiction de l'occupation et de l'annexion d'un territoire par la force. De ce fait, aucune circonstance excluant l'illicéité ne peut être invoquée pour justifier leur violation. Pour Israël, les violations identifiées entraînent les conséquences prévues par les règles coutumières de la responsabilité internationale, codifiées dans les articles sur la responsabilité internationale des États pour faits internationalement illicites, adoptés par la Commission du droit international en 2001. Il s'agit de l'obligation de mettre fin à une violation continue, l'obligation de réparation, ainsi que l'obligation d'offrir des assurances et des garanties de non-répétition. Concrètement, concernant la politique de colonisation, eu égard au caractère continu de la violation, la Belgique se permet de mettre en avant tout particulièrement l'obligation d'Israël de mettre fin à toute activité de colonisation. Comme il a été affirmé dans le cadre de la vie consultative de 2004, l'obligation des réparations doit tout d'abord prendre la forme d'une restitution, à savoir, entre autres, le démantèlement des colonies de peuplement, l'annulation des actes juridiques liés à la politique de colonisation et la restitution des biens réquisitionnés ou expropriés dans la mise en place de cette politique. Celle-ci est également l'option privilégiée par la résolution 2334 de 2016 du Conseil de sécurité. Concernant les États tiers, leurs obligations sont fondées sur plusieurs règles du droit international, à savoir les règles relatives à la responsabilité internationale des États, l'obligation de faire respecter le droit international humanitaire, ainsi que le droit à l'autodétermination. Dans un premier temps, pour ce qui est des violations graves des normes opératives du droit international, les États ne doivent pas reconnaître comme licite une situation créée par une violation grave d'une norme impérative, ne doivent pas prêter aide ou assistance au maintien de la situation illicite créée par la violation grave de la norme impérative et doivent coopérer pour mettre fin à la violation. Dans un deuxième temps, pour ce qui est des violations des règles du droit international humanitaire, l'obligation conventionnelle et coutumière de faire respecter ces règles est énoncée dans l'article 1er Cette population
And if you are one of those who can't stand Roger Wallace's politics, now might indeed be the time to go Roger. The iconic band Pink Floyd and one of the world's most outspoken musicians joins me now for a conversation about activism, Israel's war on Gaza, rock and resistance. Good to have you with us, Roger.
Very nice to be here. Thank you.
We just saw there that spectacular opening of your latest This Is Not a Drill tour. Quite a statement. What's behind that message telling people to bugger off to the bar if they don't like your politics?
It was a piece of theatre, and it was a very effective piece of theatre because obviously it's humorous, it's tongue-in-cheek. I'm not actually seriously telling people to F off to the bar. And so it's a very good way to open the show, and particularly towards the end of the tour, the latter shows where everybody knew that spoken message was coming. And so they're ready for it, enjoy it, because they enjoy telling the opposition to F off along with me.
We appreciate you censoring the F word there. It was a fair warning, though, because there's quite a lot of politics in your show. Your political statements there splashed on those gigantic screens. And obviously, towards the end of the tour, Israel's war on Gaza started, and all that messaging gained a whole new and more urgent meaning, perhaps. Can you tell us about that?
Well, Israel's war on Gaza didn't start after the tour. Israel's war on Gaza started in the middle of the 19th century. Well, not, yes, Israel's war. The Zionist war on the indigenous people of Palestine started in the middle of the 19th century. And it came to one of its primary heads on the 10th of May in 1948 when the Nakba started. And that's 75 years ago. So nothing actually started towards the end of my tour. And we all know all of that. And this morning, particularly now that they're invading Rafah and they're bombarding the place in southern Gaza that they told the Palestinians to go to because it was a safe area. What we're seeing now beggars belief in every way. It's obviously unconscionable. And every morning we all wake up flabbergasted and disgusted by the Zionist entity that is committing this genocide. None of us, including you, are quite sure what to do because the scale, the enormity of the crime that Israel is committing is so great that it's hard for us to wrap our minds around it and to figure out how to respond to it.
You're absolutely right. None of us actually knows what to do. You have been an outspoken voice for Palestine for years now. How did you come to know about this? What opened your eyes to the injustices endured by Palestinians?
Well, I'm ashamed to say that I didn't become part of the movement until 2006, when my agent booked a gig in Tel Aviv in the middle of a European tour that I was doing. I think it was the Dark Side of the Moon tour, but I'm not sure. And I immediately started to get email messages from everywhere, but particularly from North Africa and the Middle East. And one of them was from Omar Barghouti, who I'm sure you've heard of, who was one of the prime movers in Palestinian civil society, starting the BDS, Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions movement, which is simply a non-violent human rights movement to try and budge the Zionist entity from its policies of occupation and what has now turned into overt, open-air genocide.
You're obviously right about this war not having started on October 7th, but we're definitely seeing much more pushback now for people like you who advocate for Palestinians. An organization in the UK even produced a documentary on Roger's activism. Take a look.
I'm John Ware, working with the charity Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, and I'm going to examine the evidence for the charge that Roger Waters is an anti-Semite. I talked to people who've worked closely with him.
Just think about this for 2 seconds. That they would take the time and effort to attack a musician over this? I mean, it's nuts.
They were speaking publicly for the first time.
He does things and says things that Jewish people take as an attack against us as a group.
This dish comes and Roger kind of pushes it with his arm and he goes, "That's it! This is Jew food! What's with the Jew food?"
I mean, we're not trying to validate those points. I actually want to get your reaction. I mean, this seems to be an old strategy, isn't it? To kind of, I don't know, link whoever criticizes Israel's government to some kind of behavior anti-Jews.
Sorry, I interrupted you. John Ware, the supposed journalist who you saw at the beginning of that clip, is a well-known, lying, conniving Zionist mouthpiece. I have nothing but utter contempt for him. I sat through the whole of that quote documentary, and it's a complete joke. It's made by something called the Campaign About Anti-Semitism. Well, the anti-Semitism argument is now blown out of the water. The genocide going on in Gaza now has absolutely proved beyond all doubt that those of us who've been standing up for Palestinian rights for the last 20 years are not only not anti-Semitic, that our motivations are not against the Jewish religion or the Jewish people. We are motivated by the crew of thugs who are running the Zionist entity in Israel, who are all Northern Europeans. They had nothing to do with the Holy Land. And they're trying to use the Jewish people and the Jewish religion, which I admire, both of those groups, Jewish people and the Jewish religion, which is a humane religion, they don't care about. The difference between me and John Ware, and the difference between all of us on our side of the argument and all of the pro-Zionist, pro-genociders is that we
he doesn't believe
in the Paris 1948 Declaration of Human Rights. We believe that all our brothers and sisters all over the world should be equal under universal law.
I imagine that sitting through that documentary was quite an unpleasant situation for you, but obviously there's much more concrete backlash than this. A member of our online community on social media has a question for Roger about the risks of speaking up for Palestine. Let's take a look.
Hey Roger, this is Khalid from Jordan. What advice do you give people who dare to say something against the crimes and oppression that Israel is committing, but then only get attacked, threatened, and eventually silenced?
What advice do you have, Roger?
My father died in Italy on February the 18th, 1944, fighting the Nazis. My mother, who survived him, took me aside one day when I was 13 years old. And I've told this story before, but it bears retelling. And she could see that I was trying to think something out. I've no idea what it was. But she said to me, Roger, sit down. I'm going to give you some advice. All through your life, you are going to be faced with difficult problems that you're going to have to think about. My advice when you are faced with something different, this would be a good time for people to start doing what mother suggests. Read, read, read. Read everything that you can find about it. If it's geographical or political in any way, read the history. So read the history, okay? Don't listen when people say October the 7th. Read all the history. My mother said to me, when you've done that, read some more. And then she said, when you've done that, you've done all the heavy lifting. The hard work is over. The next bit is easy. Oh, really, Mum? What is the next bit then? You do the right thing. What a wonderful piece of advice to anybody. And my answer to the young man who was asking the question is, we have no alternative, my friend. We have to stand up and we have to do the right thing. And we are. And there are billions of us all over the world. We are a majority. Things have changed in the last 10, 15 years. And you can see it when... Sorry, go on.
Sorry to interrupt. Precisely on that point, throughout the past few months, we've seen millions of people who share this view, who share this sentiment, attempt to, for example, take to the streets to express their views in places like the US or the UK or France, and places where the governments have instead stood by Israel. Does that make you, I don't know, question our democratic systems here? Do you still have faith in Western democracies these days?
Now, of course I don't. I haven't had faith in Western democracy since shortly after the Second World War. Anybody who has faith in Western democracy is obviously a bit thick. They haven't been watching what's going on. Well, now is the time, because the Western democracies have come out openly. Not just Joe Biden and Antony Blinken and Victoria Nuland and Jake Sullivan and the Americans, but also Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, the turncoat leader of the Labour Party in England, and Macron, and all the leaders of the so-called democratic countries all over NATO, have all come out and said, here we are, we declare that we don't give a fig for you or for democracy or for human rights. All we care about is our narrow economic and hegemonic and political interests. And this is us demonstrating it to you. And if you elect any of us again, ever, so be it.
You'll get more of that. Roger, on that precise point, the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak took it a step further recently. He had this message for pro-Palestinian protesters. Take a listen.
Since the October 7th attacks in Israel, we've seen protests across our country almost every weekend. Many of these have been respectful, but there have also been far too many appalling examples of anti-Semitism, violent intimidation, and the glorification of terrorism. This must not stand. I've asked the police what powers they need to bring order to our streets.
There's clearly an attempt to vilify protesters here. And if I may, I want to go straight into another question from our online community, and then I'll get your reaction on both, because another member of a social media community here had this question for Roger. Take a look.
Hi, I'm Tanira from London. What would you say to Prime Minister Sunak and other leaders that are quiet or supporting Israel?
So what is your message to Sunak, to other leaders, Joe Biden, for example, who insist on standing by Israel? What is your message today?
Well, to Rishi Sunak, I wouldn't waste my breath saying anything to that cretin. You know, maybe he and his billionaire wife should retire somewhere. but hopefully not to the Holy Land, because there are enough cretins in the Holy Land already destroying the place. But don't get me started on Rishi Sunak. That young woman, it was a sensible question. There's nothing that they can do. Tanira, you have been in the street. You were one of the 500,000 the week after October the 7th, in the streets of London, demonstrating on behalf of the Palestinian people. You are one of the 500,000 or so people who would not have the wool pulled over their eyes. You stood up to be counted, and you will do it again and again and again and again. And we have to keep going back to the streets. We, the people, are many, and they, the Rishi Sunaks, the awful, awful people who are destroying our beautiful planet for profit. Let's call a spade a spade. That's what they're doing. These are the descendants of the settler colonialists from the United Kingdom, and we owe a huge debt to the people of the world, because we went out there in the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries and effed the whole thing up. So we have an absolute responsibility to stand up for human rights, equal human rights under the law for all our brothers and sisters everywhere. And I know you're doing it. I've seen you, and my heart beats stronger every time I see one of those glorious demonstrations, whether it's in the streets of London or whether it's in the Yemen, or whether it's in South Africa or whether it's in Chicago. And we will win this fight, because we are many and they are few. We are the people, and the people do not want this genocide. It's only our crazed lunatic leaders who want it. They believe in unipolar hegemonic behavior. They do not believe in love. Well, I do, and so do you. We believe in love, and we will win this fight. So
Roger, with politicians pushing these narratives and a lot of biased media coverage, we have a question now on the role the entertainment industry could play. Let's have a look.
Hi, my name is Sandrine. I'm from France, and I would like to ask you, what do you think of critics saying that artists should not have opinion on politics? Thank you.
So artists should not have an opinion on politics. You obviously are the exception to that rule, if there is one. What do you say to that?
Why shouldn't artists have political opinions?
And what do you think of the types?
It's like saying a coal miner shouldn't have an opinion, or a doctor.
What do you think of the artists that are not
expressing
expressing their opinion right now? What do you say to other artists who have remained quiet during this time?
Well, most have remained quiet, but some haven't. Anybody who knows Bono should go and pick him up by his ankles and shake him until he stops being a SHIT. You know, we have to start speaking to these people and saying, your opinion is so disgusting and degrading when you stand up for the Zionist entity. What he did in the Sphere in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, singing about the Stars of David, was one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in my life. So, and I've started to text about it occasionally. I try not to get personal about these things, but I've spent so many years writing fruitless letters to, not all, you know, not all. A number of people have answered my letters politely and whatever. And there are a group of us, and I'm not going to start naming all the names now, in the music industry who are standing up for human rights. But more and more people are discovering that the platform is indisputable. And the question is very direct. Do you believe in supporting human rights or not? You can't have it both ways. And that's true of a bass player, just as it's true of any worker in any industry. So to single out musicians and to suggest that they shouldn't stand up for it's like saying you have no right to love, because this movement is based on our love for one another and our love for the planet that we all call home, because Macron and Sunak and Biden and Blinken and Netanyahu and all the others are destroying our home.
The
home that we all live on.
You've had an extraordinary career. It's over 60 years on stages across the world. We have another question from a fan and a fellow musician in France.
Hi Roger, I'm Nicholas from Paris. I have a question for you about your work with Pink Floyd. At the time, about the composition and the production, did you think about satisfying the musical industry or not? And did you know you were writing a page of history?
So did you care about the music industry when you were actually coming up with your lyrics, with your compositions? And did you know what a big page of musical history you would be writing?
Well, the first part of the question is, yeah, obviously I knew that the industry were going to be interested. There's a song I wrote on the album Wish You Were Here called Have a Cigar, which I wrote in 1974, something like that. Come in here, dear boy, have a cigar. And that was taken from being in the studio with a bunch of executives from CBS coming in, and they thought one of us was called Pink. So it's a sort of true story, but it shows how little grasp they had of what I was writing about. Did I know it was going to become of any historic value? No, of course not. Is it? Yes, it is. That's why I've just remade The Dark Side of the Moon, which is about trying to bring home the message to people that, as far as we know, we only get one chance at life. And there's far more joy to be had in expressing our love for one another and our love for the Mother Earth than there is for expressing our hatred for one another and destroying planet Earth. So that's all that. When I wrote Dark Side of the Moon, I wasn't quite as clear as I am now about what it was about. That is what it's about. And that is the question that is facing us all every minute of every day right now. And all of us, our hearts are in Rafah with our brothers and sisters in Gaza who are being slaughtered by the Zionist entity whose time is over.
You said that this would be your first final tour. I wanted to ask you about this. Do you think about the end? And do you think about your legacy? What do you want to be remembered by? Your music or your activism or doing the right thing?
Doing the right thing. You know, I think about this every day because all of those of us who care for our brothers and sisters and who have love in our hearts, we spend every day wondering how to get through the next moment in face of this calumny. They are murdering an entire people. The Israelis are murdering every man, woman, and child in Palestine. Nothing else matters at the moment. Once we can stop them doing that, and we can only do that by persuading Biden to say no. He could say no tomorrow. All they have to do is stop sending them money, and it's over. Over. All those children can live. They can start feeding their children again. We can send in medicines, and we could start to redevelop Gaza. But you're living, they are living, unfortunately, next to an entity that has been so thoroughly brainwashed in its callous inhumanity that they're going to be very, very difficult to stop. But certainly we have to turn off the tap. So Macron, Sunak, all you Europeans, all that idiot woman who keeps shooting her mouth off, Van Laden or whatever her name is, in the European Union. No, listen to the people. The people are right and you are wrong. It's really, really simple. Read, go and read, all of you morons who seem to think there's something okay about this. You know, the world cannot be ruled. That's something else that I've learned and that I say as often. The world has to be loved and respected and above all, shared. We have an absolute responsibility to share the world with all our brothers and sisters. This is a lesson for the Americans mainly. You cannot steal the whole thing. You cannot eat the whole cake. You have to share it with the rest of the world.
I guess this is as close as I'm going to get to you talking about your own mortality and your own end of your career, but I appreciate nonetheless. This is occupying your mind, obviously. Thank you so much, Roger, for joining us here on the stream today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me and giving this bit of a voice to my brothers and sisters in Palestine. Thank you.
And thank you all for watching. Don't forget to keep in touch online. You can use the hashtag or the handle AJStream and send us your comments and suggestions. Take care.
Mr. Sunak, I understand that generally it is true that you have less power than Winston Churchill had. But mate, you have power to do incredible things, but you are not using it. The reason you are there is because you are representing the interest of capitalists who have put you there so as not to do anything. People say to me, come on, Yanis, but Labour will be better than the Tories. No, the Labour Party has never had this degree of authoritarianism in its midst. There was this mayor in North England who attended a screening of Ken Loach's fantastic movie. He was still thrown out. That's fascism. Keir Starmer has been complicit in the genocide in Gaza from day one. Rachel Reeves has adopted this magnificent toxic lie of austerity before moving to 11 Downing Street. So what is she going to do when she moves in there? I prefer to have bastards in power who claim to be bastards representing the aristocracy than bastards in power who claim to be representing the working class.
Yanis Varoufakis, hello.
It's good to be back.
I'm very glad you are back. On Valentine's Day, no less. Happy Valentine's Day.
Well, as long as it's every day.
For you?
For all of us. Love
Absolutely.
every day.
Absolutely, love every day.
365 days.
What a message. That's what we'll take away from this. Yanis, for those who didn't see the last interview you did on Politics Joe, how would you like to describe yourself? Who are you?
I am an academic economist who completely accidentally, just because capitalism went pear-shaped in 2008, I opened my mouth a few times more than I should, and I ended up in politics. So I became the finance minister of the most bankrupt European country, and that gave me some, it elevated me from being a second-rate economist to being a first-rate Greek economist.
And actually being quite important. Your new documentary series, In the Eye of the Storm, The Political Odyssey of Yanis Varoufakis, follows the interlinked journeys of your own life, the Greek economy, the international economy. And I think a lot of viewers will sort of be asking themselves, how did we get here?
A small correction, it's not my documentary.
Go ahead.
It's a documentary devised, imagined, executed, implemented, completed by a remarkable young British artist, Raoul Martinez, who for some strange reason, we have to ask him about that, decided to center this 6-part, 4.5 hour documentary on me. So I'm just a talking head in there, responding to his brilliant questions, but he has created a story out of my answers by editing them in a beautiful way, not so much about me, a story about the repercussions of the 2008 financial collapse, which brought about untold misery to people here in Britain, in the European Union, in my native Greece, but also shaped the world in a manner which has made it unrecognizable to the pre-2008 era. It has paved the way towards an acceleration of the climate catastrophe, of the new Cold War between the United States and China, what's happening now in Europe. Effectively, Europe has been subsumed into NATO. So that's what this documentary is about.
We will come to all of these substantive issues which you have just described, but it's striking to me, and it's for this reason that I want to focus on it for a moment, because I think it makes you a little bit uncomfortable to describe it as focusing on yourself. You're very quick to deflect and point, rightly so, to the people that are involved. But I wonder, you're clearly someone that people want to listen to, right? Whether it's in the form of this documentary, whether it's in the form of the interviews you do, whether it's in the form of the books that you write. And I'm struck that in our conversations, it's happened just now, your modesty, and I wonder how it feels to be in the position you are in, where people are looking to you for answers. People are looking to you to inform not just what they might think about something, but the very nature of their worldview. And that's it's an incredibly unique place to be as a human being. And you're clearly a modest person as well. And I wonder how that is for you on a personal level.
Well, if you were to ask any of my detractors, and there are many, they would call me a narcissist, arrogant, up myself, and so on and so forth. So it's very nice to be here, you know, listening to you.
Just wait, there's still an hour.
Exactly
there's still an hour, mate.
Look, ever since I can remember, I had a penchant for uncovering for myself how power works, how exorbitant social power works. Not so much electricity power, but political power. The power to make other people do things that are against their interests on your behalf. Right? That always fascinated me. It was like a whodunit. It was the greatest crime that humanity has ever managed to accomplish, and therefore I wanted to unpack it, to analyze it, to understand it myself. And because I hated capitalism and I didn't want to be involved in the labor market, I decided when I was studying here in Britain that I was going to become an academic. Not because I liked academia, but because it was a way out of the labor market. Because you're getting, essentially, back then, not anymore, back then you got paid to read, write, research, and teach, right?
Yeah.
That's effectively an escape from capitalism. And as a result of that, whatever I uncovered in this process of decloaking and unfrocking power, I was trying to explain to my students. And the one thing I didn't want to do was to bore them the way that my professors bored me, or most of them. So, I got a lot of pleasure out of putting forward an analysis of power to students, and I did this for decades. And I did it in many countries. I did it here in the UK, I did it in Australia, I did it in the United States, and then I did it in my native Greece. And then at some point, I think it was around 2003, 2004, I started realizing that, or feeling, sensing, that a tsunami was coming. A new, gigantic capitalist crisis, not one of those regular ups and downs, because, when I moved here to Britain in 1978, that was a winter of discontent that had just started. That was a crisis of capitalism, but it wasn't the big one, right? Like big earthquake that demolishes everything. That happened in 1929, and it happened again in 2008. Around 2003, I started sensing that a big one is coming. So I started speaking out beyond the amphitheater, the lecture hall of the university. So that's the beginning of the answer to your question.
Yes, it is the beginning to answer the question. And it's striking that I tried to get you on the personal, and you're already talking in macro events about the Great Depression and the Great Recession, but I tried nonetheless. So let's stick with power actually for a second. And I know we covered this in our last interview on techno-feudalism, and I would encourage viewers to go and watch that as well, because it's a fascinating conversation. But just for the sake of those who are here now, in modern Britain, you ask the Prime Minister, who has power, and he'll say that he thought it was him until he got into office, and then he pulls the lever and nothing happens, and he can't quite understand why, and that maybe it's the officials and the civil servants, and they'll tell you, actually, no, it's the politicians, because they're the ones with democratic legitimacy and a mandate to rule and to govern. You ask an MP, and they'll say, no, I have no power, I get whipped by the whips, I'm lobby fodder, I vote how I'm told, I have no power. It's the media have the power. You see where I'm going, it's a cycle. And
nobody's responsible.
Crucially, nobody's responsible. And the textbook answer is, well, Parliament is sovereign. The institution itself is sovereign, and it derives its sovereignty from its, cyclical elections every 4 years. And as a result, it's actually the British people that are sovereign. Go to a market town, go to a coastal village, ask those people if they think they have power. They'll tell you, I have no power. I feel out of control in my life. So where is power in modern Britain? Where can we look to find it?
Well, primarily, of course, it rests in the hands of those who own everything. So, if you own huge tracts of land, or, the majority of shares in one of those hedge funds that own everything else, then you have the power. If you're a banker, you have a lot of power, especially if you're bankrupt. Because the more bankrupt you are as a banker, the more of a threat you are to society, and the more likely it is that the Chancellor of the Exchequer will bail you out, sight unseen. I'll answer your question, however, in two doses. The first, again, on a macro-historical context, in a macro-historical context, if I may. The first, okay, so if you think about it, before the 18th century, before capitalism emerged to replace feudalism, under feudalism, power was homogeneous. It was one thing. There was a unity. So if you were the king, you were rich, and you had military power, and you had political power, and you had all the power you wanted, right? You could take people's heads, and you were only feared the usurpers who would behead you and take your place. But power was unified. It changed hands, but it was one sphere, one realm. With the beginnings of the great transformation from feudalism to capitalism, suddenly you have a schism, that you have a split of that unitary power into two realms, the political realm and the economic realm. So you had merchants in Southampton who had become stinking rich because of the expanding trade of wool that was being carried in their ships from Southampton to India, for spices, for silk, and so on. Suddenly these people, who were not allowed anywhere near Buckingham Palace or the House of Lords, they were just filthy merchants as far as the aristocracy was concerned. But nevertheless, they had more money than the aristocracy. So you have this split between economic and political power. Then, after 1971 and the breakdown of what was the first post-war financial system called the Bretton Woods, if you recall, you have the emancipation of the bankers from politics. So financial power splits from economic power. So now you have three realms. You have the political realm, you have the economic realm, industry, manufacturing, and then you have the bankers, the financial realm. And power goes from the political sphere to the economic sphere, finally to the financial sphere. Every time it migrates, the political sphere becomes less powerful. And essentially, the Prime Minister or the President of the United States is right to say that he has, usually he, not always he, less power today than their predecessors had 20, 30 years ago. So that is correct. However, remember the lockdown? Remember the pandemic? Suddenly we realized that states, governments, parliaments have enormous power. They can actually lock us down and into our homes. So, Mr. Sunak, I understand that generally, it is true that you have less power than Winston Churchill had, who had less power than Lloyd George had. But, mate, you have power to do incredible things, but you are not using it, because the reason you are there is because you are representing the interest of capitalists who have put you there so as not to do anything, except what they instruct you to do in terms of tax cuts, in terms of all the props that they need from Parliament in order to enhance their capacity to extract value from others.
It's actually the exact purpose. The purpose is to be powerless. Yeah. It is to do nothing.
Yes, you see, I remember I was having a conversation with a British politician whose name is not going to be mentioned here.
You sure?
Sure, because, I keep confidences, but
naturally.
Tory minister at the time. And he was saying, Yanis, how can you possibly claim that I don't truly believe that which I'm saying? That, austerity works and that free markets are always better than the state. I said, well, mate, I have no doubt that you believe in what you're saying. But if you didn't believe what you were saying, they wouldn't actually let you be minister.
Can we have a definition of terms before we progress to the next part of the interview? I want us to talk about financialization. So, for someone who doesn't know what that term is, what does financialization mean?
It's just gambling. Let me give you a very simple example of financialization, right?
Please.
Because it's not just buying shares. That has been happening now for 500 years. This is nothing new, buying and selling shares. It's a kind of gamble to buy and sell shares, but that's not financialization. I'll tell you what financialization is. Sometime, decades ago, financiers developed contracts that actually made some sense. So if you're a farmer and you face uncertainty, you may have a very bad crop, it's good to have an insurance company that provides you with an insurance contract that essentially allows you to cut your losses if things are not good. So this is a futures contract. Essentially, you buy the right to sell your produce at a certain minimum price so that if next year the price falls below, at least you get that. And it's like an insurance company. It's like, you have an insurance for your car. If there's an accident, you get some money back. You don't get everything. There's an excess, right? But you get something. So you hedge against bad things happening. So these insurance contracts became then transformed themselves into options to sell shares. So moving away from agriculture, imagine you are a financier and you purchase £1 million worth of British Aerospace shares, right? You can hedge, you can reduce your risk by saying, okay, I just spent £1 million on these shares, but I will buy a contract that essentially allows me next year, if I want to get rid of them, say the share price crashes, that I can sell them for at least 800,000. So far, so good. But then they thought, okay, well, if we are selling people, financiers, an option to sell, why don't we sell them an option to buy? That becomes more interesting and more lethal. Because suddenly you can pay money that allows you not to sell, but to buy in the future shares that you have not purchased today, right, at a given price. So effectively you are betting that the price will go up. And as long as stock exchanges go up, because governments privatize everything and they allow, and they allow the bankers to lend money to people to buy more shares and so on. That's a that's what happened with Thatcher after 1981, 1982, the big bang in the City of London. Essentially, you are guaranteeing that the stock exchange will go up, and then you're giving people a reason to keep buying options to buy. And then you think, why am I buying shares at all? I'll just buy options to buy. But then, because if you buy if you have $1 million, instead of buying $1 million shares worth of British Aerospace shares, you buy 10 chunks of these options to buy, no shares. You place 10 bets that the price will go up. If the price goes up, then you have turbocharged your winnings compared to what you would have gotten had you bought the shares. But so that's financialization. Now, people ask me, how come Barclays Bank went bankrupt in 2008, or Lloyds Bank, or the Royal Bank of Scotland, which became more bankrupt than the whole of the planet Earth could possibly be? The answer is because if you keep borrowing money from American banks to buy these options to buy, and you effectively you have turbocharged both your prospective winnings and your prospective losses. So as long as the going was good, RBS was the biggest company in the world. And then one day, the stock exchange started going down because of Lehman Brothers. All the loans were called in, the options to buy blew up, and then you are still paying for the bailout of the Royal Bank of Scotland. That's financialization. It's a massive gambling extravaganza where all the profits go to the financiers and all the losses go to you and to your generation and to your children's generation and so on.
The rewards are privatised, the risk is socialised. Yep. To focus on the City of London and those banks for a moment then, you've previously described the City of London as, a drag on the UK economy. A lot of people, and for the reasons also that you've just outlined, right, it can be a ginormous risk, a millstone around the neck, an albatross, whatever you want to call it. I don't necessarily think this, but I will argue the counter view, right, which is that the City of London essentially drives the exchequer. It's something like 10% of the tax take in Britain. And that, yes, whilst it might be risky, this financialisation can pose risks to our economy and it can jeopardise all sorts of things, potentially even topple government. Nonetheless, all of that money, some of that money that gets made there, taxes are collected on it. And as a result, it might not be a part of the economy we necessarily desire, but it is unfortunately one which we now necessarily need in order to fund the exchequer.
Remember Cuba before Castro?
I don't, but I'm aware of it.
Nor do I, but I remember the theory of it or the imagery of it. Well, its economy was based on the mafia. You could even say that 50% of the Cuban economy before Castro was the mafia. That's not a good reason for keeping the mafia. This is exactly the same thing with the City of London. Now, why is the City of London such a significant chunk of British GDP? Because Margaret Thatcher destroyed British industry. So if you destroy the factories, if you close them all down, and you leave the City of London, right, and you keep giving the City of London public assets to play with, and though it gets bigger, of course it's going to become a significant percentage of, portion of the British economy. So, it's like a mafia, which is destroying the fiber of Britain's social economy. It is parasitic on it, and it grows more and more. That is an argument for treating it like a cancer that needs chemotherapy to be excised, or radiation or surgery or something, right? It's not an argument for to keep feeding it. And because I cut my teeth as an economist and as a student just when Thatcher came in this country. I'm old enough to remember how it all worked. Why did the city become so significant? Okay, before Thatcher, it was because the city had created a way of bypassing all the rules and regulations of the Bretton Woods system. Essentially, it was a little mafia in the making that allowed bankers to violate the rules of their own governments, not just in Britain, in the United States, in Germany, in France, through various jurisdictions in the Cayman Islands, and so on and so forth. But then Thatcher comes in and boosts the City of London. That's why they loved her so much. First thing she did was to sell off council houses. Now, why was this significant for the City of London? Well, because to begin with, it essentially told working class people, here's a house, the one you're living in, which you do not own, it belongs to the local council. In the market, if this were to be sold off as a private home, it would fetch 30,000 quid, right? We'll sell it to you for 10. Essentially, we are gifting you 20,000. Now, of course, you don't have 10. So go to the bankers to get it, right? That's first number one. That's financialization's commencement in this country. You appropriate the working class because suddenly they love you because you give them 20,000. They don't understand that, your kids will not have anywhere to live because once that house gets sold and all house prices go up, the next generation of working class Britons will have nowhere to live, as is the case today. And the next thing she did was to say, okay, I'll give you something more to the British working class, to the blue-red wall and so on. What I'm going to give you is an opportunity to make some money from privatization of British Gas, of British Airways, and so on and so forth. I remember the amazing campaign by Saatchi and Saatchi to sell off British Gas. Tell Sid was the big advertisement. Sid, of course, was a working class person. And what the message to Sid is this. Look, we are going to take British Gas, we're going to chop up its value in little bits called shares. And we will, because we are Democrats and we want to push for a share owners democracy, we're going to limit the amount of shares that anyone can buy. So we're not going to give British Gas to some conglomerate. We're going to give it to you, Sid. So can you raise £2,000? Because if you do, then we will give you a share of a portion of British Gas. They made sure that the shares were undervalued, just like the council houses were undervalued. So it was Standard & Poor's and Ernst & Young and Price Waterhouse, and they told them that, look, the real value of this bunch of shares is probably around 4,000. We'll sell them for 2.